Well, we're delighted to be joined in the studio now by fellow Conservative MP Michael Fabricant. So, Michael, that was a bit of an earth-shattering reply there from Christopher Cho, wasn't it? So,
well,
it seems a good place to start with you, seeing that we've got the ball rolling.
I'm glad you're asking me that.
If any, whichever candidate wins this contest, will you get behind them and support them?
2 hours ago, I tweeted on this very subject, didn't anticipate that you were going to ask me, and I said absolutely yes, because whoever gets in, my God, we've got to give them support. But having said that, I'm backing Boris. By the way, I'm not doing an impersonation of you, Esther, with your voice. I have so lost my voice over the last...
I thought the way you've ruffled your hair today, I thought you were going to say, I'm not doing an impersonation of Boris. not me with my voice. I thought it was you with your hair.
Boris does an impersonation of me. I was there before him in the House.
So, I mean, you supported Liz Truss right to the very end. Why was that?
Well, because I was being loyal, the very thing that you were asking me about.
But so you were being loyal, but therefore, does that mean that now you can accept that it was a bit of a shambolic situation, the party?
It was shambolic with, listen, lots of people gave her advice just before she became Prime Minister. I won't mention names, but some very big people said, for God's sake, do not have Kwasi Kwarteng. And I don't want to go into reasons why, because it's a little unfair, but do not have him. And my God, has that been proven to be correct? That was the big mistake. That's what became the shambles.
Well, I'm going to get you into a little secret here as well. Philip's looking all shocked now. This is something that he said. He also said, because lots of people did give advice, don't do something that is sort of, which it was sort of like a giant experiment, what you want to do. He said, you must just deliver for the public, keep it calm, keep it sort of everything going, and just do what needs to be done to help and support the public. And she didn't do that, and you...
Well, I mean, I'd be interested, I know you've just pinpointed that, but I suppose there are certain things along the route that people would blame for Liz Truss's downfall. The first is just appointing people who supported her into the cabinet rather than appointing a broad cross-section.
I would agree with that.
There was, and you've said Kwasi Kwarteng in particular, but then I guess after that there was the mini-budget, whether that was...
Well, that's what I mean. The mini-budget stemmed from Kwasi Kwarteng.
But then people might say that sacking Kwasi Kwarteng was the beginning of the end.
One bit of advice she took from me. Sack Kwasi Kwarteng.
That didn't quite work out, though, did it?
Think
I mean, you think a seat was... a fate was sealed at the moment of the mini-budget. That's what you think was the downfall of... So, come on, you want Boris to be... leader. I made the point to somebody earlier that, we had an absolute shambles when Boris was there. We lost the safest seats in the country, or some of them in by-elections. We had a pollster on saying that Boris Johnson had an approval rating of 20%, which was just 6% above Liz's when he left office. We had high taxes. We had the nanny state running riot, even though we had a 70-seat majority. We hadn't tackled anything of the immigration problems. Why do you want to go back to all that?
Well, first of all, your opinion guy was from Opinium, and Opinium came out with a poll yesterday saying that Boris Johnson, actually, of all the candidates there might be, and I hear, by the way, that Kemi Badenoch has just ruled herself out. So I think it's just down now to the three of them, Penny Mordaunt, Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. Of course, don't forget, they've got to get that 100.
And I was going to come on to that. I was going to come on to that because Alice was here before, and she'll come back in, we'll speak later, and she was saying she doesn't think Boris will run. And fundamentally, that is maybe one of the barriers. She was talking about the money he was earning now and the fun that he was having, and she thought he'd moved on. But I think that 100 marker that you've got to have 100 supporters is a big one. Will Boris get it? Because he's nowhere near it at the moment.
Tim Montgomerie, you ought to have him on the show. Tim Montgomerie was saying that he thought it could actually top 140, and it is looking that way.
What, for Boris?
Well, what I've heard from people normally I respect is that he'll definitely clear the 100 threshold, and he could get 140. That's the upper estimate people are telling me.
I've got my phone on the desk. I don't usually, but each time I'm getting numbers through of what people are doing and who they're voting for, and you think it's up to 140.
I think that's probably the maximum, but I think the 1920... Well, there are suspicions that the 1922 committee might have chosen the threshold partly to keep Boris off the ballot. paper. But I think perhaps they've chosen a number too low. I think when we were on together last week, Phil, you mentioned a threshold of about 120. That would have been that would have made it a lot.
I'm not sure
tighter,
anybody would have actually got up.
That's possible.
But you've just said he's got 140.
Boris hasn't yet decided whether or not he wishes to stand. He's currently abroad.
Oh,
but I
Michael,
know
he's
but I know that he is watching this programme via GB News, via YouTube. So I am now going to make a direct appeal to Boris. Boris, I know you are watching this. It's the early hours of the morning where you are at the moment. You have got to stand. As Chris Choate said, you're the only one with legitimacy. You have the mandate. You're the one that the people really do support out there in the country. And you know why Starmer attacks you all the time? Because he knows you're the only one who could actually beat him.
Let me give you a scenario, Michael.
Who could take note of that?
I know.
I feel compelled myself.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a scenario. Boris gets to 100, just over 100, right? He refuses to withdraw from the contest, so he goes to the members. I would say that amongst the members, he's virtually certain to win, and we end up back in a situation where you have a leader, which never works, who have a minority of MPs supporting them, and voted in by the members. It didn't work for Ian Duncan-Smith. It didn't work for Liz Truss. It didn't work for Ed Miliband. It didn't work for Jeremy Corbyn. That an MP that starts out, a Prime Minister that starts out with a minority of MPs supporting them is doomed to fail.
Enough with the lists already. But anyway...
Do you not think the same thing would happen again?
It would happen. By your argument, it's going to happen 100%. Why? Because if Rishi got it, he will also only have 100 MPs. There are 360 or so Conservative MPs. So, you know, no one, we don't think, is going to pass the threshold of over 50%. So, you know, that would work with Rishi or Penny or anybody else. So,
Michael,
with respect, Philip, it's a nonsense argument.
I think whoever gets the most MP supporting them, the pressure will be on the others to drop out. That's what I think will happen, whoever that is.